You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and thrilled to welcome to the show for his first time, Michael Bland. He's the executive director of Black Men Vote. For those of you who may be familiar with his work, or less familiar, I should say, Michael recently served as the Southern Regional Director and Senior Advisor for Faith Engagement on the Harris presidential campaign. He's done a lot of work in the space, including serving as National Director of Leaders of Color at Education Reform Now, where he scaled a national program that trained over 400 fellows and supported the election and appointment of nearly 100 Black and Brown leaders. He knows what he's doing, and let me tell you, the nation needs him more now than ever. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, good morning, Doc. Thank you so much. So happy to be here, man.
Well, so happy to have you here. I want to give you a chance to share with us the mission of Black Men Vote. We know that coming off of the 2024 election cycle, there were lots of conversations, many of them belated, but lots of conversations around Black men and why are some Black men so Trumpy? We'll get into the data of all that in a little bit, but lay out the mission and vision of Black Men Vote coming off of that 2024 election campaign.
Well, Doc, thank you again. And what an important conversation we're going to have. Look, Black Men Vote, we want to take Black men from the margins to the center. I think for far too long, we've been left out of the conversation. Thank you for reading a brief bio. But I've been doing this thing for nearly 20 years. And I've been around it all my life. One of the things that I just haven't seen, whether it be focus groups, whether it be polling, whether it just be any kind of statistical data, is Black men showing up literally in the margins. And so our goal is to take Black men, move them from the margins and move them to the center. And I don't mean that from a demographic standpoint. I mean, we want more civic participation. We want to be able to hold our public officials accountable. We want to be able to be that one-stop shop for Black men. Look, our white sisters have Emily's List. Our sisters, our Black sisters have Higher Heights. So when a brother's running for office, where does he go? Who does he call? How do I do this thing running for city council or running for mayor? That is where Black Men Vote want to thrive. In addition to that, not only just through our massive voter registration efforts that they have done, even before I've even gotten here, but look, we've got to go from registering to vote to turn out in the vote. And then once we turn out the vote, we have to hold our public leaders accountable. I think that's the biggest margin. I think that's something that we haven't done in a long time. And I think, quite frankly, that's why we've seen a lot of our public officials fail. They give great campaign speeches, rah-rah speeches. And at the end of the day, nobody's there to hold them accountable. Nobody's there to hold them up. So if we're talking about public labor agreements, if we're talking about entrepreneurship, if we're talking about apprenticeships, and it gets proposed at a city council level or a city ordinance or even state legislation, oftentimes there's nobody there to support it. So, Black men, we are a big moving block. We are a voting block, and we care. We care about the same issues that the sister down the street that is worried about how much eggs cost or milk costs. We care about childcare. I'm someone who has a thriving 2-year-old, and I'm looking like, wow, daycare is a lot of money. Then I have twin girls that are 16 getting ready to go to college in 2 years, and so a higher ed affordability. So these are the same issues that they talk about on the news every day, but these are issues that we talk at our kitchen table about every day as well, Doc.
I mean, I think you laid that out beautifully, and I think sometimes people look at Black men like we are aliens. As if we don't live in the same communities as everybody else, as if it's not just about making ends meet, but how do we grow the pie? And one of the things I remember so well off of the 2024 election cycle is that, Vice President Harris had a whole plan called the Opportunity Agenda for Black Men. Talk to us about how rare it is to see a candidate running for president that's articulating a specific agenda for Black men that was developed by a policy leader that is a Black man, with other Black men pouring into it. Talk to us about that moment, because I think a lot of folks might have missed that moment. But just because VP Harris is not President Harris enacting that agenda, it doesn't mean that it's still not our agenda.
Absolutely. And if nothing else, Vice President Harris and the campaign team, they gave us something to build off. Got a foundation. And I'll tell you, and I said it before, oftentimes we don't see ourselves even in campaigns. We don't see ourselves in policy. So to see that somebody made some type of effort, and it may not have been perfect because people said, well, it wasn't enough. And we get the same thing in recidivism and I mean, just, there could have been more, right? There could be more in everything. But the fact that we showed up and somebody was willing to have a conversation, like I say all the time, we have to go where we are. And particularly at Black Men Vote, and it almost lockstep with the Harris campaign, is we got to go beyond the barbershop. That's one of the things I say all the time. Look, the barbershop is not what it was since COVID. I know you're bald, brother, but at one point you had hair and you still get that beard shaped up.
Look, this beard's got to get together.
That's right. It's got to get together. but we used that. If you got there at 9, you didn't get out till 12, or you didn't get out till 1 o'clock. And so when I think about the old barbershop style, that's gone, right? Now we make an appointment, we get in and we get out. We have to go where we are to continue. Like, what is really making us tick? I had the opportunity last week to go to the Black Building Trades convention, and there was brother to brother talking. I don't want to talk too much about it because it was a sacred moment, and it was some things that were left very personal. We're going to keep there, but one of the things that we don't talk about enough, and that was brought up on the Harris campaign, was mental health. If you heard how many brothers talked about mental health and what that looks like, and what that support looks like, I think the next candidate who runs for president, or the next person who's going to be our Senate majority leader or our House leader, need to understand, like, those are some of the issues that Black men are facing every day, right? And it's not just, hey, we have to talk about marijuana and how do we expunge records? No, we want, how do we make this into a thriving business? Mm-hmm. What do we do for the brothers who have a 12-year gap on their resume? How do we get them back in the workforce? So I think it was a good foundation, but it's our job at Black Men Vote, and quite frankly, other groups like ourselves, to build on that, and hold our future elected officials accountable.
And so, speaking of future elected officials, one of the elected officials that made the political comeback of a lifetime, talking about Donald Trump. There is a lot of talk about the role that Black men may or may not have played in that extraordinary comeback to the White House. Sac State, California State University, Sacramento professor did a new study that came out this spring that found that Black men did not move from the Democratic Party to Trump, as has been sort of talked about and reported on. According to their study, support for Kamala Harris among Black men, it increased 24% over time. That's what their survey found. And so over time means from April 2024 to the post-election wave. She went from 58% to 82% support around from Black men. I can't think of another candidate that has had that kind of story related to Black male voters.
Look, we've heard so much, and whether it be rumors or fly on the wall, and everybody has. I like to say they wanted to frame the emergency on democracy, the scapegoat. To me, they wanted to frame it on Black men. If this thing went bad, whose fault it was? It was Black men. But in fact, it wasn't our fault. And what's not talked about is the second biggest voting bloc for the Democratic Party, if you will, is who? Black men. And that's still without any kind of platform. That's still without any kind of representation. That's still without any kind of real leadership talking about our issues. So this thing that Black men left and went to Donald Trump, it's not true. But, here's what I will say, Doc. It's a great reality and pulse check for us as well, right? If it's such an issue, why have not, how come we haven't talked about it since? And, there are enough people we could have this conversation with, but I think we're beyond conversation. Let's start putting real policy together to codify a real working group that can get things done for Black men in America. I say this to my friends all the time, and I just pointed to it. We have the same issues that every other group has, but it just sounds different. And in fact, this thing called democracy, this process of voting, can be intimidating. And we don't talk about how hard it is in America to vote if you're a black man, right? For example, in some places in rural North Carolina, it can take you up to almost 20 miles to get a vote ID or to get ID. Brothers that are returning citizens don't know if they're on probation or parole that they can vote. In some states, if you're incarcerated, you still can vote. We're just not educated enough on the issues, on the process of voting, if you will, and the outcomes of voting. I say we talk about our judicial system, Doc, and people don't know in our judicial system, when you register to vote, it also puts you in the pool to serve in the jury of your peers. How many lives could we have now saved? So there are so many advantages to, at the very least, registering to vote. And I tell everybody, listen, I would love to sit on a jury. Put me there 2 times a week in 6 different states, 6 different counties. I would do it. But there's so many opportunities that if we're not a part of the game, we're a piece that's being played.
Yeah, I mean, so I love that you brought up, jury service. A lot of, I don't know, a lot of people who love it, who like you were going to say sign me up in 6 different states. But it is a part of the lifeblood of our democracy.
Sure.
And we know that things change when our people sit on theories, on juries. There is a context that we bring. There are lenses that we bring. There's a sense of compassion that we bring, and so you can't channel that if you're not registered to vote, right? And I
That's
don't
right.
think we talk enough about how those demonstrations of service hold hands. But back to the numbers from this survey that was released this spring by a professor at California State University, Sacramento. Most Black voters, 57%, voted in person, right? And so when we see these attacks on voting, when we see these voter suppression efforts, right, we know that they work the best, particularly on election day,
That's right.
right?
That's right. That's right. And it's one thing and the one thing I love about us as a black man. No matter what, I still think I go back to study the road we cross. We know the importance of voting, and I say this to the younger generation when they'll see that voting works. That voting is a mechanism of economic power. Those are conversations that we don't have, that we don't talk about enough, particularly in our inner cities. And what that means if we elect people, maybe they're not. I don't say they have to look like us all the time, but we have to start having the same economic conversations, right? So I'm voting for you. What does that mean? Does that mean, we can raise there were brothers and sisters who now can get contracts on different city levels, right? Whether it be janitorial services, whether it be food services, whether it be daycare vendors, right? That is all in the power of voting. When you have the wrong person in office, you lose those opportunities. And so to go back to your point, not only do we show up and vote, we show out. And I think we've stood up for a party that oftentimes we may not agree with, or we may not align. I think oftentimes I even say for our agenda, I wasn't, I love our agenda, but I think we can go more, we can go deeper. And it's not about a black issue or a white issue. It's about American issue. It's about a humanitarian issue, right? I like to often say, black men are Americans too. I care about America just like the brother who has a Trump flag on the back of a 4x4 Jeep Wrangler, and maybe sometimes more than him, right? Because we know the sacrifices at the very least what it took to, not only be a citizen here, to be a voting citizen here, to be a formidable member in society. So, voting is not, just something that we take for granted, or this theory that we have to get rid of same day. I mean, early voting, or we have to no, we go vote. And I think we need to start putting it, I think we have an opportunity, although we're upset, to channel that fear and put into something better for this country.
I mean, I think you raise a really important point about our history in this country. We're a people that were once upon a time considered 3/5 of a person under the law, under the law.
Yeah.
And so in a few generations, to go from being 3/5 of a person to being a full person under the law, but still having to fight to make sure that the law doesn't retreat from that, right? That's what we're talking about. So when people are out there hollering make America great again, right, we said, wait a minute, the history. What, you starting the clock at yesterday? right?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and speaking of the clock is running out for a lot of folks in this country who may be undocumented, whose visas might have expired. One of the insights from this study from this professor over at Cal State University Sacramento, they found that the majority of Black voters actually disapprove of mass deportations, but I can't tell. You look at a lot of the news coverage about mass deportations and about just the issues around immigration in general. You get the sense reading the news, watching the news, that Black America says that's not our issue, right? They should have voted differently, right? That is not bearing out in some of the research I'm looking at. Again, the majority of Black voters disapprove of mass deportation. How is this issue showing up in your work among Black men?
I think that, that there are a couple ways to look at this. I think one, I think some folks are still bitter about the election. And as exit polls came out, they started to point the finger and make the blame game. Well, it was white women again, it was Latinos again, it was this group, it was that group. And so I think, we have to recognize that and we have to reconcile with that. But I would say, particularly around Black men, and let's be honest, we have so much going on. I'm not sure if we see that every single day, right? That's not the thing that's in front of us. I go back to a report that I read not too long ago where it said the fathers that are most active in their children's lives are Black fathers. What does that tell you? That tells you that we give a damn, right? We care about what's going on in our community. We care about what's going on with our children. And so when we see that, we know it's not right because we do recognize it's them today. It could be us tomorrow, right? And that's the constant conversation. Now, we may not look like them or we may not speak the same language at times, but I think that we know that there's a humanitarian sense about Black men. There is an emotional accord when it comes to other people that we say, hold up, no, not on our watch. So I will tell you, conversations that I am having, I think, the first response is like, you know what? There's some groups who voted for that. Let them get what they have. I have heard that, Doc, but I would say the vast majority of brothers are saying that's not right. Because it could be them today and it could be us tomorrow.
When we come forward, want to talk to Michael about the tale of two Black male leaders when it comes to the issue of immigration. The New York Times reporting that $105 million reparations package for Tulsa race massacre was unveiled by their mayor. But you might remember a little over a week ago, uh, Maryland Governor Wes Moore vetoed a bill to study reparations. We're gonna get Michael Bland's take on that. We'll also really dig a little bit deeper to understand what this means about kind of leadership we can or should expect from Black men in positions of power on the issue. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More with the executive director of Black Men Vote when we come forward. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and he is Michael Bland, the executive director of Black Men Vote. If you haven't heard about Black Men Vote, Google it. Google it because Black Men Vote is on the move. He said two very important words moments ago while we were talking. He said working group. Working group. He also said we got to do more than just engage folks in the barbershop because guess what? COVID-19 changed the game. The barbershop isn't quite the same. It isn't the same watering hole that we're used to. And so those are just some of the uh, examples of how Michael Bland and the new team over at Black Men Vote are thinking about the critical work ahead to engage Black men across this country. Welcome back, Michael.
Thank you, Doctor.
And so before the break, I was talking about the mayor of Tulsa, who is making some big news more than a century later. The city's mayor announced a $105 million reparations package just this past Sunday, the first large scale plan committing funds to address the impact of the atrocity. What's so interesting about this is that the centerpiece of this project is the creation of the Greenwood Trust. It's a private charitable trust with the goal of securing $105 million in assets, including private contributions and property transfers and possible public funding by next spring, the 105th anniversary of the attack. Michael, what do you make of Mayor Monroe Nichols' approach to reparations? A lot of folks said not one public dollar. Don't you spend one public dollar to advance reparative justice. He said, okay, we're going to raise the money. What say you about this approach?
Man, first and foremost, I believe the brother's the first African American male mayor or African American mayor of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So first and foremost, congratulations to him and his campaign. Secondly, look, I think he is the kind of innovative leader that we need around America, not just dedicated to any party. I think he thought about it different. There's a phrase when I used to work with Congresswoman Johanna Hayes, we used to say it has to look different. And he's taken that opportunity for something, a cry that folks all across America, that African Americans have been saying since Reconstruction. Where's our where's our piece of the pie? So we were given this promise by Abraham Lincoln, then it was taken back after his assassination. Where's our piece? And so we're seeing leaders take this as an opportunity to, right that wrong, if you will. So I'm very proud of the mayor, what he's doing, and the opportunities that's going to open up for other people in his city. He talked about scholarship, talked about public housing. This is something this is what this should look like. So just really proud of the mayor, what he's done, and looking forward to seeing how this shakes out.
Now, juxtapose Mayor Monroe Nichols' approach to reparations on the local level in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with Governor Westmore of Maryland. His approach on the state level, or there we say lack thereof, the nation's sole black governor, he recently vetoed legislation that would have created a commission to study reparations. This ain't doling out checks. This isn't, any specific investments related to reparations. This was just the study of reparations. The state of California, my home state, where our home station is located, apologized last year for the discriminatory treatment of Black Americans and approved some reparations initiatives, but stopped short of financial restitution. And so talk to us about Governor Moore's leadership on this. A lot of folks inside the Beltway, at least, face has been real tight since Governor Moore vetoed this. A lot of folks suspecting that he did it because he may have presidential ambitions and didn't want this to get in the way. What say you?
Look, I think first and foremost, I think Governor Westmore is doing a phenomenal job in Maryland. And it goes back to say, we won't agree with everything. And I think he has a great opportunity. I think one of the things that he did say was he's willing to look at another study or look at it being brought back to the legislature in some kind of shape or fashion. I think that if we're being honest, as Americans, we all have to look to about what is right and how do we right our wrongs. I think Governor Westmore could have taken a different stance and probably could have been more, a little bit more pronounced on why he didn't do it. But the reality is, I believe when he gets another opportunity or another chance to fix the study, if you will, or pay to get the study done, that he will do that, regardless of whether he runs for president or not, or if he thinks he should run for president, or this may have some kind of impact. The reality is this is something that Black Americans across the country, that they're looking for, that they want to hear from their Black elected officials, that they're saying, hey, this is part of you. This is part of our DNA. You have an opportunity to right this wrong. So, one thing I do believe is that Governor Moore will get it right, and that the legislature and the folks in Maryland will hold him accountable for it.
Just as a follow-up to that, Governor Moore is the only sitting Black governor in the United States. Should he have given this reparations bill more consideration, given the weight of being the first, being the only sitting Black governor in the United States in a time such as this? Did he miss an opportunity to offer this country and the world a demonstration of what it can look like to support reparative justice more broadly?
It almost, what this reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of the Obama years. when we say, President Obama could have done so much more, in particular for the Black community. It reminds me when we say, he appointed, or he had an opportunity to appoint 3 Supreme Court justices, and none of them were African American. It reminds me that there are things that he could have did or could have done more for his home state of Illinois, more specifically, the gun issue, if you will, in Chicago. Um, they're not always going to get it right. And I'm not, scapegoating this. I'm not sugarcoating this. I think our elected officials aren't going to get it right. But what I do want to level set is that Governor Westmore has an opportunity to get it right. He has an opportunity to go back to his legislature, say, bring me back another bill, that we can, whether it be a study or whether it be, a case to say we need reparations. I think he has an opportunity to do that. And I think it's only fair to the people of Maryland and Black Americans across the country alike that, quite frankly, are depending on him to do that. So do I think he missed a moment? Maybe. Do I think he has an opportunity to set the record straight? Absolutely. And I think it just can't be, hot air. I think he has to take this opportunity and see for what he is, because there is a reality that he may miss a block because of this, right? Coming into, if he, does want to run for president, or there could be people in Baltimore, or, generations in Eastern Shore, Maryland, right? The folks that live over on Douglas Beach that could say, hey, you know what? We've been here for a while, and now, first time ever we have a Black governor, and you could look at this differently. So I think he has an opportunity to do something different for his state, and be a leader and spearhead some kind of movement nationally for us as well.
And switching gears, talking about a national movement, at least a movement of sorts on TikTok, the funniest viral videos of grown Black men calling their grown Black male friends and telling them good night. I don't know if you've been watching, Michael, but I've seen this pop up on my feed quite a bit. And, some of the responses have been outright, hilarious. But aside from sort of, the funnier TikToks that we've seen, what does this viral movement, what does it say about the sort of psychology of Black men in relationship to other Black men? Like you, I have a lot of, Black men that are, close friends, road dogs, ride or die. And, our relationships, generally speaking, I mean, there's a tenderness there, and there's there's no issue there.
Sure.
But with some men, they were outright offended by their male friends calling to say good night. What does it say about the social psychology of Black men in relation to other Black men?
You know what? I'm only laughing because we do this. There are certain things we say in group chats, and we laugh and we joke about. I'm like, we're too old to say that. We're too old to do that. I will say there's a moment of love is missing, and we're not taught how to love. I think we're taught how to financially show love, as Black men, right? If we go to court somebody, it's all about how we could, financially reel them in. Or if we want to support our children, we show them how much we could buy them, how many pairs of sneakers we could buy them, and how much clothes and value there. I think this is a moment as men, particularly Black men, we got to say there's nothing wrong with saying I love you. And it's something that I intentionally do when my boys, we get off the phone, we say I love you. And, I can remember when we first started doing it, even my daughters were shocked. Like, well, you tell another man I love you? Yeah. I am. I'm telling another man I love you. But it is funny, another brother calling him, hey man, I just want to say, I'm laughing now, but just but you know what? We can be you could be masculine and you could also be loving at the same time. You could show him it's okay to show emotion, or it's okay to just be a person, man. But it shows that we have to, at the very least, we've got to love on each other differently. And I would say I think that's one of the things I could, if I may, Doc, the biggest disconnect from our sisters and our brothers. Our sisters, man, that Black girl magic is real. They get
Mhm.
they get out there, they support each other. They support each other in the workforce. They support each other financially. Sisters are doing something. You'll have 100 of them show up to a book club. Doc, you write a book. I'm not sure if you can get 50 brothers to come out if you're not offering beers and lobster, right? We've got to just show up differently for each other, and I think we have to do that even now when we're seeing, we have our opportunity to shape our young black men when they have this in their face 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
Not this, they have another device in their face, and they're not teaching them how to love. They're not teaching them that it's okay to say good night. Um, it's okay to check on your brother when he gets off a plane. Hey man, just checking to make sure you made it safe. Because although it's all oftentimes used as a joke, but it really is a blessing to come home every night. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things, just don't share your location with your girl, man. It's okay to share your location with your best friend as well.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's spot on, and I think over time, I think it's on our generation and future generations to widen the lens in terms of how we see masculinity, how we practice masculinity, how we demonstrate masculinity, and to tell another man I love you, it doesn't mean that that's a romantic love. By the way, there'd be nothing wrong with that. Let me just
That's
be on the
right.
record saying that, but I think that's a part of the discomfort that some black men and men at large experience is that to have another man demonstrate a level of tenderness, of vulnerability to you makes you feel uncomfortable, right? And you're like, wait a minute, what's about to happen, right? And so we're going to keep this conversation going. I am so proud of you and so proud of the work that you're leading at Black Men Vote. We absolutely will have you back again very soon.
Thank you so much, Doc. I really enjoyed our time together, man, and looking forward to be back with you.
You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.